said that birth doesn't fit in a box? Well, mine definitely did not fit into any box. I went straight into active labor. It was about 7 o'clock on a Saturday or a Friday night, and I went out to dinner with my partner, thought greasy Mexican food would do the trick, and it did. I had my first surge in the restaurant. I thought that I just had to use the bathroom, which I didn't. And then nothing for 2 hours. And I thought, okay, false alarm. I sat in bed, didn't go to sleep, which was a little bit silly. And at about 11 p.m., I thought that my organs were falling out. I didn't know what was happening. I thought something very intense was happening in my body, but for some reason, I did not think that it was labor. So I sat in the bathroom by myself. I was breathing. I was trying to figure out what was happening because I wasn't having any breaks in between the surges. And they were, maybe I was having like 5-second breaks, and they were 90 seconds long, one after the other. So I did not think that I was in labor. I thought that something wrong was happening in my body. So I woke up my partner, Eric, and I said, you need to call our doctor. And the doctor said, yeah, come on in. It sounds like you're in labor. And I was desperate to hear that I was actually in labor, that nothing was wrong with my body. So I barreled in through the emergency room exit and had a bunch of people yelling at me that I was going in the wrong place. And usually I'm not one to break the rules, and I get very embarrassed by that. I did not care that I went in through the wrong entrance. I went to a chair, I held on, I started breathing, I sounded like an animal, and they got me into the triage room, which if you're going to have a hospital birth, that is the first room that you will go in, and they give you an exam to see how dilated you are. If you're okay with that, they take your blood pressure, they take your vitals, and sure enough, I was in labor. I was already 6 centimeters dilated. That happened in about 1 hour. And yeah, it was on. I was definitely in labor. And right when I heard that what I was experiencing was normal, that it was okay, that my body was just in labor, so much of my discomfort fell away. I mean, talk about the mind controlling the body. When my mind thought that something was wrong, my body was in a lot of pain. As soon as I heard that I didn't have to be fearful, my body settled into birth, all the discomfort flowed out of me, and I started to utilize all of the techniques that I'm teaching you, the breathing, the visualization. I started to listen to my recordings, and I just settled into birth. My contractions, my surges, they never slowed for the entire time. I never had more than a couple seconds in between surges. And that was just the type of birth that I needed to have. That type of birth allowed me to really, really settle into birth. It forced me to get deep in there because I didn't have that time in between to really think about what was happening. I was just in it. So I progressed to 10 centimeters in about 7 hours, which is a fairly short period of time. And I also thought that in my birth, I would be utilizing all of the different positions and movements that I'm going to teach you soon. Instead, what I wanted to do, what my body told me to do, was just to sit up totally straight with my legs crossed, with my eyes closed, and just breathe into every surge. That's all I did the entire time, with the exception of sitting in a chair and leaning forward on the bed and kind of rotating my belly back and forth. Those were the only 2 positions I utilized for the entire birth. And the visualizations that I ended up seeing were not the bright and airy, rainbow-hued visualizations that I'm giving you. What I ended up seeing was these big, huge tsunami-like waves that would carry me up with each contraction. I would peak as the contraction would peak, and I would flow back down. And I rode these waves the entire time. And even though they were kind of dark, it's what I needed to see, and they were a really powerful visualization for me. It's what I needed in my specific birth. So I got to 10 centimeters very quickly, and although my intuition was telling me to just rest for a little while, which is what I recommended you do, my care provider wanted me to go right into pushing, and pushing in the position that she wanted me to push in, which was fine. She was giving me the advice that she thought was best. But instead of stepping back and thinking what I needed, I just did whatever she said. And what happened was I pushed for quite a while. I had to push for 2 hours because my body started pushing before it was actually ready. And I was doing it because somebody else was telling me to do it versus doing it because I felt ready. And both my own body and my baby's body were fine the entire time. So I really did have the luxury of waiting for a little bit. So I encourage you, when you are in the experience or in the experience of having people tell you what to do, I want you to take a pause and think about if you also feel okay with following their advice or if you need to do something different. So I pushed for 2 hours, and finally my baby's head came out and his hand was up on his head, which is what made it pretty difficult to get him out. But again, I didn't feel any pain during these 2 hours. I felt tired, and I felt like I was really putting all of my energy into it. Like all of my energy was just flowing out of my vagina, but I didn't feel pain, which I thought was so cool. And so he came out, and his cord was wrapped once around his neck, which is also normal. It's not something to be alarmed about, but it's also something that requires the care provider to unwrap and make sure that they're breathing okay. And he was fine. He was attended to by the care provider for a couple minutes, and then he was put on my chest, and the rest of my life has never been the same. So I hope that my story informs you that you prepare, you do everything you can to have the best possible labor that you can, and then you just kind of have to let it go and stay open to whatever type of birth you're meant to have.